magic, meditation, and martial arts. 3 of the subjects that I'll be looking at this week with Martin Faulks, author of Becoming a Ninja Warrior, Black Soul Mirror, and Adepthood, Success on All Levels, among other books. Martin Faulks is a long-term practitioner of the Hermetic system of Franz Bardon. He was initiated in the mountains of Japan by the Yamabushi monks, and he is also the managing director of Lewis-Masonic, the world's oldest Masonic book publisher, so we will mention Freemasonry a little bit at the end as well. I'm Angel Millar, author of The 3 Stages of Initiatic Spirituality and The Path of the Warrior Mystic. Stay tuned to learn more about meditation and the development of the powers of the mind, what's required of a genuine spiritual teacher, and the 4 elements in esoteric initiation and the martial arts. Martin Faulks, thanks for joining us.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You've been on my radar for probably 10-15 years, actually, and we have quite a few things in common, and Freemasonry, obviously, but esoteric spirituality, meditation, and martial arts as well, which is a pretty unusual combination, I think. But maybe we could just get a little bit about your background before we go into the more sort of spiritual and martial side. So who are you, and how did you come to these things?
Wow, who am I? That's a very deep question, that one. So let's just start with the more easy to answer part of that question, which is, how did I get into these things? For as long as I can remember, I had a sense that there was something more, some hidden potential in humans that we weren't using. Now, of course, when I was young, I didn't know the words or the concepts to match what I was thinking. So I didn't know about bodhisattva or about adepts or anything like that. But when I saw television programs which involved some kind of empowered transformation, whether the person was finding out they came from another planet and they had superhuman powers, or whether they were bitten by a radioactive spider, I was pretty sure that was going to happen to me in some way. And I was pretty sure that if human day-to-day life was the norm, there were a few extra gears. There's actually more that meets the eye. And because of that, I think I was attracted to all sorts of things which were somehow me reaching out towards it. Now, when it comes to martial arts, my mother, she took me to a martial art class. I must have been 6 or 7 years old, maybe even younger. Wow. It was Hapkido, and I was probably a bit young for that then, but those classes are very much play.
Right.
But you learn quite a bit. As time went on, things changed subtly. I gained a friend, an ally, who was just like me. His name's Atma. He took a yogic name. His name was Joss back then. And he and I, we were in martial arts class like the Boy Scouts of the class. We did everything we were asked exactly as we were asked. And we believed everything we were told exactly as we were told. So we got there before anyone else came to class, and we left after everyone had gone. At one point, we were doing 5 martial arts classes a week, and sometimes we'd do a special Sunday class. But everything was martial arts for us, So So everything we read in our practice, we'd try out. There was a set of exercises where it was said that you could sit in certain positions and breathe in certain ways, and this would help you channel your ki or your vital force. It's the Korean version of chi, as it were. Yeah, and you could gain strength. Do you know we couldn't get them to work, and complained to our martial arts instructors. We were taught a set of knockout blows, which were pressure points on the body. If you hit them, the person should fall unconscious. And some of these, actually, were rather obvious they'd work. They were sort of on the temple or certain areas of the neck. But other ones on the arms, on the legs, they wouldn't work for us. And our instructor told us that, well, these are precise pressure points, so you have to get them exactly right for it to work. So we went to an acupuncturist and paid that acupuncturist to mark them, and they got a hammer and hit them with a hammer, and they still wouldn't knock you unconscious. So we started to find out that some of these things that were being taught were just handed down without being tested or questioned.
Right, yeah.
By then, we were doing Hapkido and Kuksul 1 are very close in the family tree of martial arts, and we'd kind of moved, and instructors had sort of rebranded and refocused. So my teenage years were mostly learning meditation and martial arts. When other people were getting drunk and partying, I was in the dojo and very dedicated to this.
Yeah. Wow. And later on, you practiced ninjutsu as well, right? Which I think has become your main martial art, if I'm not mistaken.
For me, ninjutsu is a very exciting thing to train in, and it allows a freedom of thought. In other disciplines, which I've dedicated my life to, my real spirituality is based around the teachings of Franz Bardon.
Right, yeah.
And Franz Bardon is a Czech Hermetic author, and many of the exercises and the forms of training which you undertake in that system are based around the elements.
Yes.
Water, air, and fire. So to discover there was a martial art that actually used these as different states of mind, different strategies, got me very interested. And to discover that the Yamabushi, the monks in Japan, had people who'd specialized in one of these elements for the whole of their lives, and that they had untaught techniques pertaining to this, was very exciting to me. So as soon as I heard about this, I started to seek out teachers, and again, I'm still young at the time here, but it was a strange encounter. I was interested in conjury, like the sleight of hand and that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
I found actually teachers who were practitioners of this art at that club, and it was a very informal thing. These were people who very self-taught. They've been, they're trained under Japanese masters. But they were kind enough, very honourable for them to take on to this young student and to show me what they knew. And of course, the arts were quite close for them. Now, with martial arts, though, I think there's a value aside from style.
Right.
I think the best approach to life is a brave one.
Yes, definitely.
And I don't mean that just to do with physicality or to do with risk. I think it takes a warrior mindset or a heroic mindset to be able to keep us empowered and balanced state.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, this may be different for different people, but I'm talking about mundane things that we all need to face as much as the greater challenges,
Right.
which we also have to deal with. So I think the correcting and directing of your own mind. So when your mind goes off track, when your thinking goes in a direction that isn't the direction you know to be healthy or useful, I think it's a very heroic, powerful thing to correct that mind.
Right. Yeah.
I think there are many risks in life.
Yes.
We all are going to age. We all have this physical body which is subject to illness. Around us, there are many forces which would seek to direct us into certain ways of doing things, not all of which are conducive to our will here, our goals in life, or to balance.
Yeah, no, probably most of them.
Yes, to swim against that tide where more than any time in history our mind is bombarded with temptations and messages that tell us we're not doing enough in a certain direction, or we should be buying something, or our status isn't high enough if we don't achieve something, or we want to eat that food, or we want to gain that position, or we want to seem attractive to the opposite sex. If we just spend the money on the product that's being advertised, or buy into that way of doing things, I think it takes a heroic mindset to be able to hold firm and direct a balanced, content life in a world where your discontentment is financially, politically, and psychologically valuable to others.
Yeah.
And I actually, as time goes on, I've found that this brave mindset where you say, yeah, I'm going to deal with this, becomes increasingly important. Not just for, as I said, living the authentic life aside from the whims, wills, programs, messages around you, but also facing hardship that you're going to, that we all experience, facing the inevitability of death.
Yeah.
And taking that same heroism into that mindset, saying, I'll overcome any challenge that's placed before me. I will skillfully, thoughtfully, and heroically deal with what's placed, even that last challenge.
Right. Yeah.
Even that last challenge, that last journey, I'm up for that challenge when it comes. So I will leave this body and I will transverse to the next place, and keep control and keep direction and keep a good heart through even that. And I think the practice of martial arts, there you go, this is a long-winded road back to it, can help keep that mind state. And I think it's good to keep challenging yourself with things.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned the Yamabushi monks that you studied with in the mountains of Japan. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so the Yamabushi follow a path called Shigendo. Shigendo is a form of training which translates as magical powers through hard training or through hardship. Some people would say magical powers through suffering. they are ascetics that test themselves with their training. Now, if you look at my life, if you look at the different things I have done and do, it may look a little bit like I'm sort of doing a bit here and a bit there. Actually, nothing could be further from the truth. Since my teenage years, I've dedicated 2 hours of every single day to the training in Franz Bardon's system of Hermetic. It has been the most hard undertaking, but the most beautiful blessing. If I ever get to a point where I slow down or I get a bit stuck, then what I do is I seek out someone who is better at what I'm trying to do.
Right.
And that could be a specialist anywhere. It could be someone in Sri Lanka, or someone in the Czech Republic, or it might be someone in Japan. And the specialist skills the Yamabushi have are very rare and very interesting. And they relate to the mastery of the elements to some degree.
Yeah.
They are true practitioners, and if you're listening to this and you're interested in this form of training, do search, have a search for Shugendo. Have a look at my book, The Path of the Ninja, and you will find there are teachers now in Japan who modernly are opening up, and they are taking Western students. Normally, training will start with 2 or 3 days of fasting. There is restricted water, and the training takes you through the tests that you are experiencing in life. They relate to the different worlds in the Buddhist system. So the Buddhist school that the Yamabushi have been very influenced by, the schools like the Qigong and Tendai. They have the idea of there are different sort of traps that humans can get a bit caught in psychologically, and so they're deliberately testing you against them so that you can overcome them in your life. It's probably a bit much to go into them all now, but let me describe one to you, and you can kind of see why this would be a very useful thing. Almost everybody listening to this has at some point met someone who sees lack in everything. There's not enough things for them.
Right.
And it's a strange trap whereby there's not enough affection in their opinion, so they pull on their friends so hard that their friends actually withdraw. So they create a lack. They're asking for too many favors, too much attention. They don't think there's enough money, so when they get the money, they spend it like crazy because they're sure it's going to disappear. So they create lack in that point of view. Nothing is satisfying. The petrol tank might be full for them sometimes, but the petrol gauge is broken inside. So there's never enough. So that would be the realm of hungry ghosts in this Buddhist 6 realms. And this is a kind of mental trap you can get into when you think there's a limited amount of resources and you're fearful of that, and you create the limited amount of resources around you. So they'll take you through these 6 realms with tests, and the tests can be quite extreme. It could be standing under a waterfall and in winter. It could be doing a meditation in a cave with chili and mustard as your incense. Yeah, you can see how that's definitely a suffering realm. It could be being hung off the side of the mountain in order to face the drop. And these are normally, as you can kind of get the feel, related to the elements. Running through a big fire or walking on hot coals, that kind of thing. So the Yamabushi, there are different schools and they have different syllabuses. So the Yamabushi training was a wonderful thing for me. It was a wonderful thing, and it was wonderful to be around dedicated practitioners and to see their ability and their wisdom.
Right. On the note of martial arts, I'm sure you've noticed over the last few years there's been a lot of criticism of traditional martial arts. And, there are definitely some things to be criticized. Like you probably, I have experience with Qi, but, I've also seen demonstrations of martial arts masters allegedly knocking people down with Qi at a distance, which to me looked completely fraudulent, although maybe not intentionally. So I think people were fooling themselves. But what is the relationship of the traditional martial arts to the contemporary martial arts, or what is the benefit of them, or the pitfalls, perhaps?
Yeah, so I myself also take part in quite modern martial arts and rather ancient ones as well. I mentioned that it's important to keep yourself, your response time, and your spirit full of dedication and energy, and be up for a challenge. So recently I moved house, and there's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school on the street just around the corner from me. And I thought, right, that's it. We're going to do this. And it's very new.
Yeah.
And I've always liked boxing. I've always boxed. So I'm used to competing in a very physical way. But wrestling is very different.
Yeah.
Submission fighting. Absolutely wonderful to be able to try techniques against someone who's actively resisting in a serious way. So I think that's a really good thing. That's very interesting. And sometimes when you've got somebody who's particularly challenging, yes, that can be a gut check.
Right.
Like I was talking about. I think a lot of martial arts, it's not about the style, it's about how much you put into them.
Right.
I once saw a Shotokan karate school in Japan. I tend to end up coming a bit early or leaving a bit late for things, and I end up in obscure places in rural Japan, where I've gone there because there's something, or a teacher, or a strange thing of interest to me. So I'll hear that there was a maid became enlightened from mundane work. She was so good at being a maid that she became a Buddha. So I'll go and find her house, or I'll hear there's a special place where only an enlightened person could balance on a there's like a pole on the end of a bridge. So I'll visit these strange places, and it ends up with me staying in the mountains and watching things and listening and meeting people. And during that time I saw a Shotokan club where every single movement, so just imagine a karate punch from the waist. When that was taught, they practiced it. They just do the first few moves of Shotokan karate, but they'd do it for a couple of years, and they'd learn to do it from any position, any response. I'm lying on my back, I can move my hip and punch karate style. I didn't think it was actually possible to do that. They could and use it as a response of everything. Someone, in martial arts, everything that, what do you do if someone grabs your wrist? Or what do you do if someone grabs you around the collar? In this school, they'd learn how to use that single punch for anything. Someone grabs your wrist, you punch them in the hand, you punch them, you know. So, and I saw it drill to the point where all these Japanese students had it like lightning. And it was just unbelievable. I mean, they were... Now, maybe that wouldn't be so useful if we're in a competitive environment, you're having one move that you've practiced sort of
Right.
10,000. But I think pretty much those students who came from all walks of life in a self-defense situation, I think they wouldn't freeze up, and I think it'd be very effective.
Yeah.
So I think we need to find a balance. There are some strange things in traditional martial arts that maybe have got a bit caught up with superstition, and I think compliance. A lot of people don't really like rough and tumble, so martial arts evolve, so there's a bit less of that, and actually not everyone's suitable for it. You know, some people might injure a bit more easily than others. So sometimes things aren't pressure tested like they could be, and so we've got some of these things. And you were mentioning one of the sort of extremes there, where there's someone who've got very compliant students that have gone through repetition, and a bit like in stage hypnosis, where a lot of the person responding is because they're on a stage and everyone's watching.
That's right. Yeah.
You've got they're on the martial arts stage, aren't they? And
that's it.
Yeah, they're 15th degree black belt. I kid you not. That is a thing. Is going to knock them out with their psychic powers, and they've kind of got to go along a little bit if they want to stay part of the group. And they've seen others also work on them. But the same is true the other way around in competition martial arts. You could drill in some things a bit, and that could be counter to what you want. If you're a boxer and you're used to someone stopping the bout when there's a clinch, if you're a wrestler and you're used to having to get your shoulders up, it's a bit different if you're used to wrestling and someone bites you or gouges you in your eyes or something. It's different. So I think knowing the limitations and taking that into account is very good. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned that you're also a long-time practitioner of the work of Franz Bardon, who's definitely a less well-known esoteric teacher, I guess mid-20th century. But perhaps you could just talk a little bit about what that is and how that might connect to martial arts as well.
So basically the path laid out by Franz Bardon is a meditative path, but it's most certainly drawn from great circumspection. His first book was called Initiation into Hermetics.
Yeah.
And that was actually because there was another title called The Path of the True Adepts at the time. So he kind of felt that he shouldn't call it that.
Right.
But it is very close to what I would say would be a universal path. So Franz Bardon's way of doing things is really about learning to watch your mind, learning how to do that without disturbance, learning to contemplate certain different things without disturbance, learning to clear your mind of all thoughts, learning to practice visualization, learning to work with the breath. It's a systematic path, and there are 3 different books in his series. The first one is very much about internal arts. It's about mastering your own mind and the energies within you, and then we start to go beyond you. It's about sort of the out of the body skill, about these higher attainments and tuning in to higher energies. And then the final step would be the word. It would be Kabbalah. That would be the third book. So Franz Bardon is seen as one of the most complete systems, and I think that's probably a very fair thing to say. One of the things you were talking about, traditional martial arts, and we were discussing them, is it real? Is it really going to work? The Bardon system has got criteria for moving from one step to another, which is performance based.
Okay.
And so there are many different spiritual paths where we've got where you can progress from this knowledge. You can learn things or memorize information.
Yeah.
Or you can progress by waiting, by time, or by doing good deeds towards the school. But that's not your ability. You haven't evolved yourself.
Right.
Now, how it relates to martial arts, well, I think the connection, of course, is that being congruent, balanced, free of thinking is required for both practices, for Hermeticism and for martial arts. I think this is true. Meditation is the art that if you master it, will allow you to master all arts, in a sense, because you're mastering your mind.
Right.
And the mind makes such a difference, and in all things. Strategically, there are many things you can't do in combat or in a dangerous situation if you haven't achieved that kind of balanced mind. So
yeah,
there are some people who can't retreat.
Right.
To them it would be a terrible thing to retreat, even if they needed more information, even if they needed to back off to get more information, or even if they evidently couldn't win, or there's no need to fight, they can't retreat. Their water element isn't strong enough to allow them to flow around things or be adaptable. There are some people who they can't be assertive, aggressive in a circumstance. There are some situations where preemptive, fiery approach may actually be the best outcomes in a dangerous situation. Some people don't have that in their personality.
Yeah.
What about the ability to remain firm? To just stay still and do nothing? To not be moved by fear or aggression or misdirection? That earth kind of quality. Maybe that might take a bit of developing to have. And perhaps we could think of a approach with the air element would be thinking your way or talking your way out of a situation. Becoming at one with that situation maybe could even be a strategy.
Yeah.
Now, to be able to do all four is very, very rare. Most people are stuck in one of those elements. You look at them in their life, and maybe they're a fiery person at home, they're a fiery person at work, and their hobbies are all fiery. So they've got that gear and it's working for them, but they overuse it. There's no moments where they'll use eloquence or tenderness or apologize or retreat. That would be something they don't have.
Right.
So I think that's without the mental development, without the balance, then you'll never be able to deal with situations or life in a flexible way.
Yeah.
So I think that's the link between the two. And of course there are many martial arts styles have kindred arts which are sort of very focused towards this.
Right, exactly. And certainly traditional martial arts of Japan and China incorporate, or often incorporate, a lot of meditation or sort of inner alchemy work as well, which would probably be very much akin to Franz Bardon's curriculum. But where exactly did Franz Bardon get his ideas and his practices from? Do you know?
Well, there's a lot of debate about this. Bardon himself, he was interested in the mechanism.
Right.
What Bardon wanted to do was to find out how things worked. He wanted to be able to see those hidden forces, to direct those hidden forces. Because of this, he used to explore all avenues. He most certainly learnt from people around him.
Yeah.
And he sought out rune masters, and he went to see Tibetan practitioners. He bought every book on the subject he could. He'd read everything with great circumspection. He went on to buy every single book published by Shivananda, and used to correspond with him. He wrote to Aleister Crowley and asked whether he could translate magic in theory and practice for his students. He used to teach a course based on George Loma, 7 Hermetic letters, that kind of thing. He was a member of a Pansophic society, which was associated with an occult bookshop. His father had associations with theosophy. But most of all, he had a quality of genuine engagement in a way that most people don't do. So Bardon was more interested in practicing Hermetic exercises, in learning to control and direct the forces of consciousness both within himself and without, than anything else in life. That was his calling. When his wife and him decided they would get married, he made some clear terms that if she wanted children, she was going to have to do everything to do with them. He was going to live in a separate house because this incarnation, he had some big missions. And those big missions were to do with his Hermetic training and his works. So where did they come from? It is my firm belief that Bardon got behind the words of the different traditions and saw what they were all pointing at in different ways. So, and that is why, if you read his works, it's like an ink blot test. People see what they want to see. To them, it's either completely Kabbalistic or it's completely from the ancient Egypt, or it's a Christian path, because it is a universal path. Now, if there's a slight touch to it, he uses a lot more Western esoteric sort of phrases, but he does tend to describe it in terms of yoga and Buddhism as well.
Right.
All paths are one, and I think Bardon is the closest out of anyone so far at being able to see that one path, aside from all the labels and colours and culture.
Right. Yeah. So why do you think he is much more obscure than many esoteric and occult and spiritual teachers of the 20th century?
Yes, I think if you and I were to set up two different stalls on a market, one which sold sweets and colourful things and exciting stuff that was immediately gratifying, and the other one sold tonics and bitter herbs that helped the organs work. Different things. I think the one that would get the most attention would probably be the sweet stall.
Oh yeah, by far.
So, yeah. So Franz Bardon is
Yeah.
a path where you are dedicating at least a couple of hours a day on your own, without fail, and you do need to do that to progress. It's a bit like with physical training. If I said to you, I'm going to weight lift once every 6 weeks, you say, this isn't going to do it, Martin. You really need to be doing that once every 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
It's you do need to do that to do these exercises. The reward is from your success. There's no external reward. No one's going to give you a title or anything like that.
Right.
It's going to be quite a long time before you're doing much, which is for practical things. There's no wish fulfillment until later on, and most of it's improving yourself. And it's quite, if you're not interested in the mechanism behind, if you're not like Bardon, if you don't think, wow, I do want to see how this works beyond all things, I want to know, if everything is made of pure consciousness, how is it made?
Right.
If an intention can be imprinted on something, how do I do this? Then it's not going to be very exciting reading, because it doesn't have the colour or flavour of a tradition or religion or anything like that. If you look at what people do, not what they say, what it is that's really of value.
Right. Yeah.
So right now, as you and I talk, the vast majority of humans during their life will by the time they die, have spent most of their life, their waking hours, watching television.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if we're talking about these hidden forces, and you're talking about testing with reality, you don't if you spend that same time, let's imagine you, me, and some friends, we were we lived in a log cabin in the woods. You could, you get different stones, you get different woods, and you could wrap them up so you can't see what they are. And you could spend every evening, spend an hour, just, can I sense the difference? Can I sense which one's got the emerald in it, which one's got the piece of the oak or the pine or the willow or whatever? You could sense whether there were different resonances.
Yeah.
After a few months like that, as a game together, we could see how good we could get, how much is actually possible for a human. To do that would involve a lot of facing reality. It's something you can't cheat, and we'd all see how good the other person was every day. Wow. And there'd be nothing but our ability could give us a position there. We could it'd be very clear to see.
Yeah.
Now, it's quite interesting, now we're talking about this, how so few people who want to know about hidden things would do something like that. So maybe it's an interesting idea to ask, well, why? That's so obvious. You don't need a book for that. It's the obvious port of call if you want to learn to sense hidden things. Why are we in this situation? And it would be interesting to hear your opinion. Why would you think that kind of undertaking, which surely would be extremely exciting for someone who wanted to know if there were hidden forces that could be genuinely sensed, why are we the people watching television rather than doing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of people who are involved in alternative spirituality or New Age spirituality today, but my personal sense is that the vast majority are not really looking to develop themselves, and they're maybe not even looking to develop any kind of special powers in terms of chi or the mind, but are looking for a substitute religion, and that's more about faith and community, and not really about developing themselves. So I think, although people would claim that they want that, I don't think that they do, generally speaking.
Yeah, so I understand, and I think it's important to say that some people's the vision of their happy life and their successful life may involve a community and we said substitute religion there, but it could involve a community and a positive group of people around them, as much as development of abilities.
Yeah.
Some of the early Neoplatonic and Hermetic writers used to use the term Eudaimonia,
right,
as their and I think that's probably where the term adepthood eventually came from. I think it was somebody trying to render what the closest thing to eudaimonia would be,
right,
in some that term. And I think some people's eudaimonia does involve a lot of support around. I think it's a community-based practice, maybe a lot of great value to some people, and I'm not sure how often that appears modernly.
Yeah.
I tend to do a lot more training this myself, but from outside, what I often see is that it's a big test for teachers and leaders at the top of such groups. It's a big test of their character.
Yeah.
And it's
Definitely.
Not always passed.
No, that's right. I mean, I've heard many shocking things about leaders of esoteric groups that makes me question that the world in that world in general, to be perfectly blunt. But there we are. But getting back to your question, I think the other reason why people don't develop these practices or skills, I suppose there is a lot of different things that are appealing to people today. That everything is very convenient. TV, even if you want food, you don't have to make food. You can just order it up, and many people do. And I think many people have become used to being consumers rather than doers, really, or creating things themselves.
Okay, so now I've got back to the beginning of our conversation, and
yeah,
we're talking a little bit about a heroic life.
Right.
It takes some bravery to be able to say, okay, I'm going to let go of status in order to grasp the genuine.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when I'm doing this kind of training, if I'm doing it alone, that's great. But I'm going to make sure I judge myself on this completely honestly. Can I sense something and then check it out with my eyes afterwards and see if it's true?
Right.
Can I influence something and generally can I control myself? Is there anything that I'm doing which isn't part of what I want to be doing? And do I have the tools, do I have the abilities to harmonize anything that's getting in the way? So there's that, and then there's also, okay, I need to look to this higher calling now, and it's going to take some bravery because I've had many years of being conditioned to this. I've got a lot of replacement things in my life, so I don't know many people in my local area, but I do know all the characters on the television show I watch every evening.
Right, yeah, that's right.
So if I let go of the television, I'm going to feel lonely for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to replace that with something more authentic and different. You're talking about the food and the pleasure. Maybe I've got some replacement activities. Maybe I'm playing computer games or doing something else that gives us, or maybe I'm drinking alcohol a lot, or
Yeah,
having a lot of really wonderful food or something. Doing something that replaces authentic success.
yeah,
So my ambition is being artificially quelled. So
right.
you can play a computer game and you can achieve something, but you haven't achieved anything real. You've achieved something on the computer. I'm not saying there aren't things you can learn from computer games, incidentally. But I'm saying that you could get caught out. You're playing a game where the character you're playing is doing well in life and is
Mm-hmm.
healthy and fit and well fed and athletic and beautiful, and everything's going well in their life, and you're sitting there in a life that's not working so well, and you've forgotten to have anything to eat today, and you haven't exercised. So
Mm-hmm.
you can end up having replacement success.
Right, that's right, absolutely.
Now, in addition to that, there's the other side, which is our society's got some great plans for you if you don't think that you are good enough. You're told all the things you need to be doing. Everyone should be exercising every day. We should all be learning a foreign language. We should all be doing our brain training app. We should all be taking the vitamins that we're sort of meant to be doing. We should all be doing self-development things, and we should be pushing forwards in our job and so on.
Yeah,
So some bravery saying, actually, I'm not going to be moved by others' ideals. I know what my calling is. Now, that's not saying you're not going to respect your body and look after it and everything like that. But there's also a bit of bravery if you've been bombarded with images. I mean, I lift weights and have lifted weights. I've actually recently changed the routine from my early 20s all the way through to my into my early 40s. I lift weights for an hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I did in my lunch hour.
Right.
Now I do 3 times a week, but I lift a lot heavier. I found that as I've got older, my recovery is different.
Yeah.
Now, I eat 2 meals a day, and I only eat what most people would describe as health foods.
Right.
When Kitty and I fell in love, she gave me some chocolate, and I hadn't had chocolate since I was a small boy.
Mm.
And I was like like a tribesman, sort of, wow, I couldn't believe this. You eat this every day. But if you look at me, you look in the mirror, I don't look like a model. Wow. So that's very interesting. So you can eat 2 meals a day, only eat health food. You can work out. I do a couple of martial arts classes a week. I lift weights 2 to 3 times a week. I like to run. I like to walk. I'm very physical by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have 5% body fat. So what measure do you need to go to look like the people on that television program you're looking at?
Right, yeah.
And that's quite an interesting thing. Now, maybe I'm not very genetically blessed, I think we'd be quite surprised if you looked at the actors' routines, and I mean, obviously they're a different age than us. So I think it takes a bit of bravery as well to reject some of these false ideals that are being put to you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's even worse if you're a parent as well. It's even worse because, wow, you're meant to be moving your career along, and at the same time you're meant to be, baking apple pie with your child every night and teaching him to fish and playing with them and doing everything like that, and all the things I listed as well.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot to live up to if you've got a full-time job and everything. So I think some of the bravery is choosing what you're going to do. Now, what I've chosen in my life, and it's been very clear for me since earliest time, is my specialization. What I'm really excited about is the ability to control consciousness, to the arts of the mind. I'm a meditation specialist.
Right, yeah.
And that's what I'm really interested in. I love anything to do with the arts of the human consciousness, or arts of consciousness in general. So, as you're probably aware, meditation, memory, autosuggestion, anything like that, and yeah, I'm going to be intrigued by it.
Yeah.
And want to want to know how, and I'm always looking to improve. Yes, always a student and always learning.
Yeah. And you have your own school of meditation, if I'm not mistaken.
After many years of following that path laid out by Franz Bardon, and having had a lot of help from those who'd gone before me, a lot of help from practitioners. I'd visit them and say, I'm working on this from my own path, and can you help me? And they'd say, yes, you can stay in my shed, and I'll teach you every evening. And these are very kind people. I discovered something. I'd always said no to taking on students. I thought it would get in the way.
Yeah.
And it was never anything I had any natural inclination towards.
Yeah.
But I discovered that I was becoming a bit of a blockage in the system. When people were coming to me, I was not offering them the same opportunities and kindness as others had to me. So I started to take on students, and I needed to make sure that the students were serious and dedicated, and so we're working on the same page.
Yeah.
People had seen many of the my YouTube channel has demonstrations of the kind of things you can achieve if you have a great control over your mind, and if you practice these arts. And it would inspire a lot of people just to want to be close, but the making sure the person was genuine.
Right, sure.
Pretty soon after that, I discovered some things I didn't know. I didn't know that the very students that would come forth are ones that help you with your next step.
Right.
It's some cosmic thing that if there's something in your development you're struggling with, someone will appear, and they're actually they're struggling with the same thing, but in a slightly different way. So to help them, you've got to sort it out yourself.
Right.
They're gonna poke your tender parts. They're going to open your old injuries if you don't solve it.
Right.
Likewise, in addition to that, I didn't realize the changes in your heart that had to go through to be a genuine teacher. We're talking about that, the challenges of being a teacher in a school, and we've seen that, it's pretty tough and so on.
Right.
And I've seen good examples as well. I want to be clear, I've seen in Masonic orders, I've seen great selfless teachers. I've genuinely seen that. But I've seen a lot of people that get pulled into stuff, and it gets a bit strange. And this, when you've got a lot of people who really will do what you say, you can get a bit, it can be a bit of a test.
Right.
Well, what I discovered fairly early on is if you try to maintain status at all as a teacher, you put yourself in a terrible conflict. Because if I'm trying to remain above you and at the same time trying to lift you more towards me, then we've got a contradiction. So I'm starting to hold back. I'm starting to lead you around in a circle, or I'm starting to do funny things because I don't want you to overtake me or to advance. So I found very early on that if I wanted to really do this, not take on a student and hope, or take on a student for other motives. No, I wanted to make sure that that person had the best possible chance. I needed to go in there with a genuine wish that they would surpass me.
Right, yeah.
And actually look forward to it and think, wow, if they need, and if once they've surpassed me, I'll learn from them. You know, if they can see further, if they can do better, then we'll change roles. That would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, once you've done that, once you get to the point where you've cleansed your heart, you've let go of anything like, I need to prove myself, I need to be on, you know, I want to be in this position, or my sense of self is about my ability, or my sense of self is about status within this group, or anything like that. It all starts to flow so much better. It's wonderful then. You've freed yourself and you can genuinely help people. I tell you, I wish I'd had me at the beginning of this path. I wish I'd had me because you really, there are people who are are achieving what it took me years to do, sometimes in months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, on that note, maybe you could let people know where they can contact you or find out more about where to buy your books.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, so my website is martinfaulks.co.uk, and
Great.
you can see I've written a lot of books on meditation from the Western point of view.
Yeah.
Because not many people know meditation is a Western art as much as it's an Eastern. Meditatio, and we've got traditional writings on it which are as old.
Right.
So you just have to look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Yes, and if you go on that web, you can also have a look at my YouTube channel. That's sort of where most people sort of find and see, and you can hear me talking on a lot of these different subjects.
Great. Awesome.
Now, sorry.
And there's also Lewis-Masonic.co.uk, of course, for books.
Yes, so I work, my day job, as it were, is as the managing director of a Masonic publishing company. And it's the oldest Masonic publishing company in the world. It's there to serve Freemasonry. And yes, you'll be able to see my books, but also many other wonderful books on the subject there.
Yeah.
And of course, I came to Freemasonry through the same interest I'm telling you. I was reading actually about the SRIA, the Societies Rosicrucian in Anglia.
Yeah. And
I'd never heard of the Freemasons before.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I found the real Jedi. This sort of secret society doing good behind the scenes and keeping and uplifting people and helping in a subtle way. Mm-hmm. So that's what led me to Freemasonry.
Great.
It was from there. I think perhaps you can hear the same kind of hopefulness in my voice as I was describing towards martial arts there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a characteristic. I go into everything with a very positive attitude, with great hopes. Yes. And Freemasonry to me is a great inspiration. It's a lot more gentle than the other arts we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
But this is most certainly a meditative art, where in Freemasonry, you know, for anyone listening who's sort of not immediately aware of it, Freemasons memorize and perform rituals like moral plays, inspirational plays, or ceremonies, and it's kind of very much about remaining aware, remaining in the moment, and it's very much of the mind, being able to recall these and understand the philosophies and really communicate it. So it's and you can certainly see early Freemasons did view it like that. They view it as a form of contemplation and a form of meditation. Yes.
Yeah. Great. Well, with that, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming to speak with us.
Oh, it's been lovely talking. Thank you very much. It's been an honor.
Thank you.